Bridie and I'm a researcher investigating volcanic eruptions at the University of East Anglia. I'm also a lifelong Lord of the Rings fan. You may think you know the story. Hobbit finds ring, ring must be destroyed, big battles, Middle-earth is saved. You may think it's a story about friendship, about the strength of the underdog, or even the Industrial Revolution if you're feeling really fancy. But you would be wrong, because it's actually a story about a huge erupting volcano. It's the story of an unfolding volcanic crisis and how people, government agencies and researchers like me respond to protect themselves, their communities and their livelihoods. I know you don't believe me, so I'm going to take you on a journey through the real story in the movies, the one I invented in my mind, and also show you where the story of Middle-earth and Mount Doom can and can't be compared to a volcanic eruption in real life. I hope you enjoy it, and maybe like the Hobbits, you'll learn a few things on the way. First of all, let's introduce the true star of the tale, Mount Doom. Mount Doom is a stratovolcano. You can see this by its classic triangular shape. It's been formed by repeated eruptions of lava, ash and other volcanic products. According to Lord of the Rings mythology, the activity at Mount Doom is linked to the strength of Sauron, with increasing activity towards the end of the Third Age as Sauron's power is restored. Of course, Sauron uses the fires of the volcano to forge the Rings of Power. He uses a handy side entrance to the lava in the crater, known as the Door to Sammath Now. Let's do a quick reality check on this volcano. Now, in the movies, the volcano is actually based on Mount Ngauruhoe, I hope I pronounced that right, in New Zealand. This volcano was last erupting in 2012. It had a small eruption, some gas emissions, and there was a little bit of seismic activity. Unrest associated with this eruption stopped in 2015. So no Sauron at the moment, but it is 2020, so you never know. Second of all, we do see lava lakes at some volcanoes, and you can walk inside ancient lava tubes, but I don't think you'll quite find anything like Sammath Now if you are on this planet. If you do not go in there, it would be very, very hot. So, now we've established the volcanological facts, let's look at some of the key moments during the build-up to the eruption of Mount Doom. First of all, the discovery of the ring, aka a key data set. We meet Bilbo and Frodo living happily in the Shire. Bilbo is a long-retired volcanologist, and he gives Frodo his life's work. This is the ring dataset. It's got all of his information on Mount Doom and its past activity levels inside, but Frodo has no idea what this means, so he shows it to Gandalf. Gandalf is an expert volcanologist and hazard planning guru, so he freaks out and heads off to do some research into what this might mean. Unfortunately, he realises that Mount Doom could be waking up. At this point, Gandalf tries to get the blessing of his supervisor, Saruman, to launch a mitigation strategy. But for some reason, Saruman does not want to hear about it and actively tries to sabotage Gandalf. Now, in my opinion, it's likely that Saruman has just invested millions of his own money in property around Mordor, and as such, he doesn't want prices to drop with the scare of a volcanic eruption before he can sell up. I definitely made that up completely. So let's move on to the next key moment. It's the Secret Council! Gandalf calls on Elrond, his ally in a different department, to arrange a secret meeting to discuss what to do with this worrying new data, the ring dataset. They invite some key stakeholders like all good hazard management planners. First of all, we have Aragorn. He's a rising star in local politics. He holds a minor position in government and is respected by most, but he's hated by the establishment. His ancestors presided over a terrible misjudgment during the last eruption, so he is desperate to prove he can do better. Next up, we have Legolas and Gimli. They are representatives from local emergency response and planning departments, but they have drastically conflicting views on the best approach to take. In short, they hate each other. Finally, we have Boromir. He is a member of the press who, bizarrely, is here representing the interests of Denethor of Gondor. Potentially a bit of nepotism going on there. He has completely misunderstood the significance of the ring data, how it can be used and what it actually means. Now, after much discussion, the hobbits volunteer to do the grunt work of the research, deploy the monitoring kit and analyse the data, despite a terrible lack of funding. Gandalf has said he will supervise, so hopefully they should be okay. Now, Boromir, in the meantime, still firmly believes that the time for research is over. He thinks the information should be released to the public immediately, so whilst pledging to assist the group by cutting red tape in Gondor, he's also writing an inflammatory article about it in a national newspaper. That's going to cause some trouble. Reality check. There is a lot of tension here between the different stakeholders. This can often happen in real life. Economic concerns, political influences, social pressures all have to be considered alongside the scientific data to determine the best course of action in a volcanic crisis. Volcanic unrest can go on for years with no significant eruption, which means teams have to constantly assess the risk to the local population and eventually make a decision about when to evacuate. That is not an easy task. Now in this story, the tensions lead us to the next key moment, the breakup of the fellowship. The task force falls to pieces. The group place all responsibility for success on Frodo and Sam. In my opinion, this is a very risky strategy. Boromir, meanwhile, has realised his mistake and published a retraction of his article, but the damage is already done. Aragorn now desperately tries to contain the political and socio-economic crisis that has developed, and he is aided by Legolas and Gimli, who thankfully have put aside their differences in the hopes of bringing about a positive outcome. Reality check again. Teams dealing with volcanic unrest never rely on a single piece of data to guide their decision-making. We would analyse volcanic gases, use studies of past eruptions, interpret seismic data, and look at ground deformation data from satellites, in the very least. And that's just the volcano side of it. On to our next key moment. The Two Towers. This entire film is one huge test for our characters. The fragmented team are fighting their own battles to try and prepare Middle-earth for the inevitable eruption of Mount Doom. Aragorn's leadership is tested to the limit, and he has to make alliances with other government agencies, aka Rohan. Gandalf battles to get a promotion, granting him valuable resources with which to expand his monitoring effort and more time to guide the hazard preparedness team. Meanwhile, unfortunately, Frodo and Sam find themselves lost in a maze of data that they can't understand, and they take some advice from a very questionable source, and it's not Wikipedia. The next key moment comes from the politics in The Return of the King. Activity at Mount Doom is escalating. We see it throwing out ash and generating volcanic lightning at various times throughout the movie, but we have yet to see any real preparation or evacuation from Gondor, although Gandalf, Aragorn, Legolas and Gimli are all doing their best behind the scenes with limited resources. Here we see Gandalf trying to get Denethor to take some action. He presents the plan that Aragorn has come up with and explains how a collaboration with Rohan could help things to go smoothly. As you can see, Denethor is pretty suspicious and power-hungry. He suspects a political coup and so rejects Gandalf's advice and refuses to ask for help from Aragorn. He's a little bit of a drama queen. Now, Gandalf loses a bit of faith in Denethor's moral compass, and so inevitably he goes way over Denethor's head and asks for help anyway. And this is one of the best scenes in the whole trilogy, so let's just watch the drama. Aragorn is receiving an email marked as urgent from Gandalf, and he's heading up to inform the rest of the team that they're asking for help.
The beacons have been emitted! The beacons are lit!
Turns out the beacons have been lit.
Gun knuckles for aid!
So, Aragorn has heard the call and he wants to help, but he's hindered by the fact that he isn't actually in charge right now. Lucky for him and the citizens of Middle-earth, Elrond has been preparing a secret weapon. It's Anduril, Flame of the West, aka funding and political clout. This is basically a massive promotion for Aragorn. You can see he's pretty excited about this. He can use this new power and budget to begin evacuations. If this turns out to be the right call, then Aragorn is sure to be crowned king in Denethor's place. So, things are kicking off. Let's move on to the scene we've all been waiting for, the eruption. Okay, so the hobbits have metaphorically thrown the ring into Mount Doom. They have set the final analysis running on the ring data, but they are exhausted, have run out of money, and lack the computer power to get a forecast of just how bad the eruption will be. Aragorn is holding the edges of the exclusion zone in place, but the public are starting to get a little bit frustrated. At this point, Mount Doom erupts. If we watch the clip here, we can see several key things. First, we get the collapse of a building, probably related to an earthquake caused by magma moving under the ground. Next, there's this huge shockwave, which for some reason has occurred without any major explosion happening at the volcano yet. You definitely would not want to be stood there, just in this scene, FYI. All of a sudden, we start to see huge amounts of subsidence. A huge crack is opening up in Mordor and the ground is just falling into it, along with all of these orcs that haven't evacuated. Aragorn is lucky in this moment because his exclusion zone falls right at the edge of the subsidence. And here it is, the big one, a lateral blast from the side of the volcano. Volcanic bombs are raining down and lava is pouring down the slopes, all at the same time. You can tell the characters are a little bit confused. And that is because there is lava that is looking pretty runny here in this scene with Frodo and Sam, coming out of the volcano and pouring down the sides at exactly the same time as a huge ash cloud is forming above the vent. Let's do a reality check on this eruption. We do see shockwaves associated with volcanic explosions. However, usually the shockwave comes with the explosion, not way before the explosion. Subsidence can happen as a result of magma moving from one location and erupting at another. A dramatic example of this occurred in Hawaii in 2018. The crater floor at the summit of Kilauea dropped by 500 meters when lava started pouring out from a new location. For really, really large eruptions, subsidence can be huge, resulting in what we call caldera collapse. That's probably what is happening to Mordor in this scene. If there's a really huge amount of magma underground and it suddenly erupts elsewhere, the subsidence will occur and just drop all of Mordor down into the ground. The main problem with this eruption is that we have explosions and lava flows happening at the same time. This is very unlikely because the two types of eruption require completely different types of magma content, gas content, and a whole host of other factors that just couldn't occur at the same time. So that was a little bit unrealistic, but let's see what happens after the eruption. In the aftermath, Aragorn and the rest of the Hazard team are praised for their work. Aragorn is crowned king, which seems a little bit excessive to me, and Frodo and the hobbits return to the Shire to write up their findings. They receive global acclaim for their research. And of course, Mount Doom never erupts again. So there you have it, the untold story of the Mount Doom volcanic crisis. I hope you can now agree that Lord of the Rings is not about destroying a ring, it's about a massive volcanic eruption. Now I'm going to go back and watch them all again. See ya!